Some things should never leave your mouth. Not because they are shameful, not because they are wrong, but because the moment you reveal them, they lose power. The ancient Stoics understood this well. They knew that not every thought deserves an audience, not every struggle deserves attention, and not every part of your life should be placed in someone else's hands. Yet every day, people give away pieces of themselves without realizing the cost. They share their plans before they've acted on them. They expose their weaknesses before they've learned to manage them. They reveal their deepest ambitions to people who do not understand them. Then they wonder why they feel distracted, discouraged, or pulled away from their path. Real strength rarely announces itself. It grows quietly. While many people spend their lives explaining themselves, seeking approval, and broadcasting every detail of who they are, the Stoic focuses on something far more important: mastering what can be controlled and protecting what is still becoming. Some of the greatest setbacks in life do not come from failure, bad luck, or opposition. They come from revealing too much, too soon, to the wrong people. The less attached you are to being understood by everyone, the more freedom you gain to become who you are meant to be. Most people never lose their dreams in a dramatic moment. There is no single collapse, no obvious failure, no clear sign that everything has gone wrong. What usually happens is far quieter. An idea enters the mind, full of possibility. It creates energy. It creates movement. For a brief time, that movement feels effortless because the vision is still untouched by reality. Then comes the temptation to talk about it, and that is where many people begin losing what could have changed their lives. Most people never lose their dreams in a dramatic moment. There is no single collapse, no obvious failure, no clear sign that everything has gone wrong. What usually happens is far quieter. An idea enters the mind, full of possibility. It creates energy. It creates movement. For a brief time, that movement feels effortless because the vision is still untouched by reality. Then comes the temptation to talk about it. The temptation feels harmless. In fact, it often feels responsible. Sharing your plans can seem like a form of commitment. It can feel like confidence. It can feel like accountability. Yet many people discover, without fully understanding why, that the moment they begin talking about what they intend to do, something starts to change. The urgency begins to fade. The focus becomes scattered. What started as a personal mission slowly becomes a conversation. Part of the reason this happens is rooted in human psychology. We are shaped by reactions, approval, recognition, and belonging. When someone responds positively to an idea, the mind treats that response as a reward. The problem is that the reward arrives before the work. A person announces a future achievement and receives praise in the present moment. For a short time, that praise creates the emotional experience that should have been earned later through effort. The effect is subtle but powerful. The mind begins to relax when it should be preparing. It begins to celebrate when it should be building. This is not weakness. It is simply human nature. Understanding it allows you to protect yourself from it. The Stoics understood this tendency well. They knew there is a difference between wanting something and becoming the type of person capable of achieving it. One lives in the imagination. The other is forged through action. This is why they placed so much emphasis on discipline rather than desire. Desire is common. Everyone wants something better. Everyone imagines a stronger future. Discipline is what separates a passing thought from a transformed life. It carries an idea through uncertainty, boredom, frustration, and delay. Without it, even the most inspiring vision remains trapped inside the mind, admired but never realized. There is another danger hidden within premature disclosure. Once a goal becomes public, it becomes connected to other people's opinions. Some opinions are supportive, others are skeptical. Many are offered with good intentions. Yet even well-meaning advice can create noise. A simple plan that once felt clear becomes crowded with perspectives. One person says the goal is too ambitious. Another says it is too risky. Someone else suggests a completely different direction. Gradually, the original vision becomes harder to hear. Instead of moving forward, energy is spent managing reactions. The focus shifts away from execution and toward explanation. What began as a personal pursuit becomes a negotiation with the expectations of others. Marcus Aurelius captured this mindset perfectly when he wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." The lesson reaches beyond character alone. At some point, every vision must leave the realm of discussion and enter the realm of action. The more time spent defending a path, the less time spent walking it. This does not mean silence is about secrecy or distrust. It is not about hiding from the world. It is about understanding the fragile nature of growth. A seed does not grow because it is constantly dug up and examined. It grows because it is given time to develop roots. Ambition works in much the same way. In its early stages, it requires protection. It requires patience. It requires space away from unnecessary interference. There is wisdom in allowing progress to mature before presenting it to the world. Not because recognition is bad, but because recognition is far more valuable when it follows achievement rather than replacing it. Many people can remember a time when they felt completely committed to something. The vision was clear, the motivation was genuine. Then, little by little, that commitment faded. Often the cause was not a lack of ability. Attention scattered, energy divided. The original purpose slowly dissolved beneath conversation, comparison, and outside influence. This is why protecting your next move is less about protecting it from other people and more about protecting it from your own tendency to seek immediate validation. The greatest obstacle is often not criticism, it is comfort. Praise can become comfortable. Talking can become comfortable. Imagining success can become comfortable. Real progress rarely is. If these ideas help you think more clearly and live more deliberately, consider subscribing. Not as a way to follow someone else, but as a reminder to keep returning to the work of understanding yourself. The deeper lesson is not simply about keeping plans private. It is about developing a relationship with yourself that does not depend on constant acknowledgement. There is a unique kind of strength that emerges when you learn to work without applause. When effort continues regardless of whether anyone notices, motivation begins to come from a different place. It becomes internal rather than external. The work itself becomes meaningful. Progress becomes its own reward. Results become more important than recognition. This shift changes everything because it frees you from the endless cycle of seeking approval before taking action. A calm mind understands that not every thought deserves expression. Not every ambition requires an audience. Some goals grow best in silence because silence creates concentration. It creates patience. It allows reality to take shape without the pressure of performance. The deepest transformations happen quietly, long before anyone notices. By the time others see the change, the difficult part is already finished. The foundation has already been built, the habits have already been formed, the identity has already begun to evolve. That is why your next move deserves protection, not because people are waiting to stop you, not because success must remain hidden forever. It deserves protection because meaningful change begins as something delicate. Before it becomes visible, it must become real. Before it earns recognition, it must survive repetition. Before it transforms your life, it must first transform your daily actions. And that process asks for something increasingly rare in a world that rewards constant sharing. It asks for quiet commitment. It asks for patience. Most of all, it asks for the willingness to let your actions speak long before your words do. One of the easiest ways to lose control over your own mind is to hand someone else a weakness you do not yet understand yourself. The strange part is that this often happens with good intentions. A person feels overwhelmed by an insecurity, confused by an emotional struggle, or frustrated by a recurring fear, and the natural impulse is to talk about it. There is nothing inherently wrong with seeking guidance. Human beings need wisdom from others. They need perspective. They need support during difficult periods. The problem appears when vulnerability is shared before it has been examined, before it has been understood, before the person carrying it has learned how much influence it still holds over their decisions. At that point, the weakness is not simply being discussed. It is being transferred into an environment where its meaning can be distorted by other people's interpretations. Epictetus warned, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That mastery begins with understanding your own fears before asking others to make sense of them for you. Until a weakness has been faced honestly, it is easy to confuse exposure with growth and confession with understanding. Modern culture often treats disclosure as a virtue in itself. The more open a person appears, the more authentic they are assumed to be. Every feeling must be expressed. Every doubt must be revealed. Every insecurity must be placed in the open. Yet openness without understanding can create more confusion than clarity. There is a difference between acknowledging a weakness and building an identity around it. There is a difference between recognizing a fear and repeatedly reinforcing its presence through constant discussion. The Stoics understood this distinction. They believed that honest self-examination was essential, but they also believed that awareness should lead somewhere. It should lead toward improvement, not endless exposure. A wound does not heal because it is constantly displayed. It heals because it receives careful attention and proper treatment. Consider how often people seek reassurance instead of resolution. They want someone to tell them they are enough. They want someone to remove uncertainty. They want another person to ease discomfort that can only be addressed through personal growth. For a brief moment, reassurance feels helpful. It creates relief. It softens anxiety. Yet relief and transformation are not the same thing. One provides comfort. The other creates change. If a weakness still controls your actions, no amount of reassurance from others will permanently solve the problem. The work eventually returns to you. It returns to your habits, your thoughts, your decisions, and your willingness to confront what makes you uncomfortable. This is where emotional discipline becomes so important. Emotional discipline is often misunderstood as emotional suppression, but the two are completely different. Suppression pushes feelings away and pretends they do not exist. Discipline allows feelings to exist without surrendering control to them. One avoids reality, the other faces reality directly. A person practicing discipline does not deny fear. They study it. They observe how it influences behavior. They notice when it appears and what triggers it. Instead of reacting automatically, they create space between emotion and action. That space becomes a source of freedom. It allows wisdom to enter before impulse takes over. As this process continues, something subtle begins to change. The weakness loses its ability to dominate attention, not because it disappears overnight, but because it is no longer treated as an authority. The individual stops organizing their life around avoiding discomfort. They stop making decisions solely to protect an insecurity. The fear may still exist, but it no longer sits at the center of every choice. This shift is powerful because it transforms the relationship between the person and the struggle. Instead of being controlled by it, they begin learning from it. Instead of seeing it as evidence of inadequacy, they see it as an opportunity for development. Another challenge emerges when weaknesses are shared with people who have not earned the responsibility of hearing them. Not everyone interprets vulnerability with wisdom. Some people project their own experiences onto it. Others offer advice that reflects their fears rather than your reality. Even when intentions are good, the result can be misleading. A personal struggle becomes filtered through someone else's worldview. Before long, you may find yourself carrying opinions that were never yours to begin with. The original issue becomes harder to identify because it has been buried beneath layers of external interpretation. There is a quiet strength that develops when you learn to handle certain battles privately. This does not mean isolation. It does not mean refusing help when genuine guidance is needed. It means becoming capable of sitting with discomfort long enough to understand it before seeking outside influence. It means developing trust in your ability to confront challenges without immediately searching for validation. That trust becomes a foundation. It creates stability during uncertainty. It creates confidence during difficulty. Most importantly, it reduces dependence on how others respond to your struggles. Over time, this changes the way you move through the world. You become less concerned with managing perceptions and more focused on managing yourself. The need to explain every insecurity begins to fade. The need for constant reassurance becomes weaker. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable because it has been studied rather than avoided. The weakness that once demanded attention gradually becomes smaller, not because it was hidden, but because it was understood. And when understanding replaces dependence, another pattern becomes easier to recognize. Many of the pressures people experience are not created by circumstances alone. They are created by the subtle ways they hand their sense of stability to things outside themselves, often without realizing it. The Stoics viewed wealth differently from how most people view it today. They understood that money could be useful, but they refused to treat it as proof of worth. To them, wealth was a tool, nothing more. A tool could be used wisely or foolishly. It could help or harm depending on the judgment of the person using it. What mattered was not the possession itself, but the relationship someone developed with it. This distinction is important because many people unknowingly allow money to become part of their identity. They stop seeing it as something they have and begin seeing it as something they are. Once that happens, every gain feels personal and every loss feels like an attack on the self. This attachment creates a subtle form of dependence. When self-worth becomes connected to financial status, peace becomes fragile. A promotion brings confidence. A setback creates anxiety. A successful month creates optimism. A difficult season creates self-doubt. The emotional state rises and falls alongside circumstances that can never be completely controlled. This is exhausting because financial conditions are constantly changing. Markets change, opportunities change, economies change, life changes. Anyone who ties their identity to something so unstable eventually finds themselves living on uncertain ground. Stability becomes difficult because the foundation itself keeps moving. Part of the challenge comes from the way society rewards visible success. People are encouraged to display achievements, announce milestones, and measure progress through external markers. Financial accomplishments often become one of the easiest ways to gain recognition. The problem is that recognition can become addictive. The attention feels good, the approval feels validating. Yet every form of validation creates a hidden dependency when it becomes necessary for confidence. Instead of asking whether a decision aligns with personal values, people begin asking whether it will impress others. Instead of pursuing meaningful goals, they pursue visible ones. The direction of life slowly shifts from internal conviction toward external approval. This influence becomes even more powerful when financial information is shared too freely. The moment people know what you earn, what you own, or what you can afford, they often begin interpreting your choices through that lens. Some may expect more from you. Others may compare themselves to you. A few may quietly resent you. None of these reactions are entirely about money. They are about the stories people create around money. One person sees success and feels inspired. Another sees the same success and feels inadequate. A third sees opportunity. A fourth sees privilege. The number itself remains unchanged, yet the meanings attached to it multiply endlessly. The Stoics encouraged a different approach. They focused on what could be controlled rather than what could be displayed. They understood that a person can possess great wealth and still be deeply dissatisfied. They also understood that someone with modest resources can experience remarkable peace. The difference is not found in the amount, it is found in the relationship. Money can solve practical problems, but it cannot provide wisdom. It can purchase comfort, but it cannot create character. It can offer convenience, but it cannot determine meaning. Confusing these categories often leads people to chase things that were never capable of fulfilling them in the first place. Emotional pain has a unique way of pulling attention outward. The moment conflict enters a relationship, whether it is a friendship, a family bond, or a romantic connection, the mind naturally begins searching for relief. An argument happens, words are exchanged, feelings are hurt. Suddenly the desire to be understood becomes incredibly strong, not because people are weak, but because emotional discomfort creates a powerful need for certainty. When emotions are unsettled, clarity feels distant. The mind starts looking for someone who can confirm that your feelings are justified, that your perspective is correct, and that your actions make sense. In that moment, sharing the story feels like a solution. It feels reasonable. It feels necessary. Yet what often begins as a search for understanding gradually becomes something else entirely. The story gets told once. Then it gets told again to someone different. Small details are added. Certain details are left out. Not intentionally, but because emotions influence memory. People rarely describe situations exactly as they happened when they are hurt. They describe them through the lens of their experience. This is part of being human. Every person views reality through their own perspective. The problem is that those listening only receive a fragment of the truth. They are hearing one side of a complicated situation. They are hearing an interpretation rather than the entire reality. Yet from that interpretation, opinions begin to form, judgments begin to develop, conclusions begin to settle into place. The Stoics understood that strong emotions can temporarily distort judgment. This does not mean emotions are bad. It simply means they are often incomplete. Anger reveals one part of a situation. Hurt reveals another. Disappointment reveals something else entirely. None of these emotions automatically provide the full picture. This is why the Stoics valued pause and reflection. They recognized that immediate reactions often create consequences that remain long after the emotion itself has disappeared. A feeling may last for an hour. Words spoken because of that feeling can last for years. This principle becomes especially important when personal relationships are involved, because relationships operate on trust, and trust is difficult to rebuild once it has been weakened. Many conflicts that could have remained private and manageable become much larger because they are repeatedly discussed with people who were never part of them. Advice begins arriving from every direction. Some people encourage confrontation, others encourage distance. Some tell you to leave, others tell you to stay. The original issue becomes surrounded by competing opinions. Instead of listening carefully to the reality of the situation, attention becomes divided among countless outside perspectives. What started as a disagreement between two people gradually becomes a conversation involving many others, each carrying their own biases, experiences, and assumptions. Seneca offered a timeless reminder when he wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." The more voices that enter a conflict, the easier it becomes for imagination to overshadow reality. Before long, people are no longer responding to what actually happened. They are responding to interpretations, predictions, and fears layered on top of the original problem. What needed clarity becomes crowded with noise. There is another consequence that receives far less attention. Every time a relationship is defined publicly by its worst moments, those moments begin to overshadow everything else. The kindness is forgotten. The loyalty is forgotten. The years of understanding are forgotten. People remember the conflict because conflict captures attention more easily than stability. Long after a disagreement has been resolved, others may continue seeing the relationship through the lens of the story they were told. Their perception becomes frozen in a moment that no longer represents reality. Meanwhile, the people within the relationship have already moved forward. The emotional wound has healed, but the public impression remains unchanged. This is one reason strong relationships often protect their private struggles. Not because they are hiding something, but because they understand the value of preserving context. They understand that not every disagreement deserves an audience. Some problems require patience rather than publicity. Some tensions require honest conversations rather than public validation. There is wisdom in allowing difficulties to remain within the space where they can actually be resolved. Resolution rarely comes from collecting sympathy. It comes from responsibility. It comes from listening. It comes from confronting uncomfortable truths without turning them into performances. Over time, this approach changes more than individual conflicts. It changes the way relationships are experienced altogether. The need for constant validation becomes weaker. The urge to recruit others into personal disagreements begins to fade. Trust grows because privacy is respected. Accountability grows because responsibility is accepted. Most importantly, identity becomes less connected to moments of conflict and more connected to the quality of one's actions. When that happens, relationships stop being performances for an audience and become what they were always meant to be. Spaces where growth, understanding, and genuine connection can develop away from the noise of public judgment. Many people spend years carrying a version of themselves that no longer exists. They move through life as adults while continuing to see themselves through the lens of experiences that happened decades earlier. A difficult childhood, a broken home, an absent parent, constant conflict, emotional neglect or instability during important years can leave a lasting mark. These experiences matter. They shape perception. They influence expectations. They affect the way a person learns to trust, connect, and respond to challenges. Ignoring those realities serves no purpose. Pretending pain never happened does not create strength. Yet there is an important distinction that often gets overlooked. There is a difference between acknowledging your past and allowing your past to become your identity. One creates understanding, the other creates limitation. The mind naturally returns to familiar stories. It seeks explanations for present struggles, and family history often provides them. When life becomes difficult, it can feel comforting to point toward an old wound and say, "This is why things are the way they are." Sometimes that explanation is even accurate. The challenge is that explanations are not the same as solutions. An explanation may help someone understand where a problem began, but it cannot determine where that person goes next. At some point, understanding must be followed by responsibility. Otherwise, the past becomes a permanent residence rather than a place that was visited and learned from. The danger appears when family struggles become the primary lens through which life is interpreted. Every disappointment starts connecting itself to an old wound. Every challenge becomes evidence of a story that has already been accepted as truth. Opportunities are approached with hesitation because previous experiences suggest failure is inevitable. Relationships are approached with suspicion because trust was broken in the past. Growth becomes more difficult because the mind keeps consulting an outdated version of reality. The person is no longer responding to the present moment alone. They are responding to years of accumulated memory layered on top of it. The Stoics believed that perception carries enormous influence over experience. Two people can face similar circumstances and reach very different conclusions about what those circumstances mean. One sees limitation, the other sees a challenge. One sees a reason to stop, the other sees a reason to continue. This does not happen because one person is more fortunate. It happens because interpretation shapes action. Family history is part of a person's story, but it is not the entire story. The moment someone begins treating it as the complete explanation for their life, possibilities start becoming smaller. The future begins shrinking to fit the boundaries of the past. There is something powerful that happens when responsibility gradually replaces identification. Responsibility does not mean blaming yourself for what happened. It means recognizing that your next decision belongs to you. Your next habit belongs to you. Your next response belongs to you. This shift changes the relationship between past and future. Instead of asking how old wounds continue to define life, attention turns toward what can be built despite them. The focus moves away from circumstances that cannot be changed and toward actions that can. This creates momentum because energy is no longer trapped in endless reflection. It begins moving toward construction. As that momentum grows, old experiences start finding their proper place. They remain important, but they stop occupying the center of everything. Pain becomes part of the story rather than the entire story. Difficult memories remain real, but they no longer control every interpretation of reality. The person develops the ability to remember without becoming consumed. They learn from the past without continuously reliving it. This is not denial, it is integration. The experience is acknowledged, understood, and carried forward as wisdom rather than as a burden that must be constantly revisited. There is also a deeper reason why this matters. The way you speak about your past influences how you protect your future. A person who constantly hands their old wounds to others often struggles to protect what they are building next. They become accustomed to defining themselves through what happened rather than through what they are becoming. Yet growth requires a different mindset. It requires understanding that your future deserves the same care and protection as your healing process. Not every dream needs explanation. Not every ambition needs approval. Some things grow stronger when they are allowed to develop quietly. Eventually, a moment arrives when the central question is no longer about where you came from. The question becomes where you are going. That shift changes everything. It does not erase hardship. It does not rewrite history. What it does is place attention where it belongs, on the choices being made today, on the habits being practiced now, on the person being created through daily action. The past may explain part of the journey, but it does not have to determine the destination. And when that realization takes hold, the future becomes something worth protecting, nurturing, and building with intention, rather than something that remains trapped beneath the weight of old stories. There is a reason meaningful transformation often happens far from public attention. The most important changes in a person's life rarely begin with applause, recognition, or visible results. They begin quietly. An idea appears, a possibility emerges, a different future starts taking shape in the mind. At first, it is fragile, not because the vision lacks value, but because it has not yet been tested by reality. Every significant achievement starts this way. Before a business exists, it is a thought. Before a skill is mastered, it is a commitment. Before a person becomes who they hope to be, they first carry that version of themselves internally, long before anyone else can see it. This stage is delicate because potential is easy to imagine but difficult to sustain. Many people mistake the excitement of possibility for the discipline required to make it real. The temptation to share these visions often arrives very early. A new goal creates enthusiasm, and enthusiasm naturally seeks expression. People want to talk about what they are building. They want others to understand the direction they are moving. They want encouragement. They want support. There is nothing inherently wrong with this desire. Human beings are social by nature. The challenge is that encouragement can sometimes arrive before commitment has been fully developed. Recognition appears before repetition. Validation arrives before sacrifice. The result is subtle but important. Energy that should have been invested into action gets partially redirected into conversation. The focus shifts from building something to explaining something. This is one reason the strongest builders often appear quieter than expected. They are not hiding their ambitions. They are protecting their attention. They understand that focus is limited. Every hour spent defending a vision is an hour not spent strengthening it. Every unnecessary debate drains energy that could have been directed toward execution. This does not mean all feedback is harmful. Valuable advice can accelerate growth. Constructive criticism can reveal blind spots. The issue is not feedback itself. The issue is timing. When a vision is still developing, it requires more work than discussion. It requires more practice than praise. It requires more patience than publicity. The Stoics understood this relationship between intention and action. They believed that character is built through repeated behavior, not through declarations of future greatness. A person does not become disciplined by talking about discipline. A person becomes disciplined through daily choices that reinforce it. The same principle applies to every meaningful goal. Long-term visions are not achieved in dramatic moments. They are achieved through ordinary actions repeated consistently over time. This reality is often less exciting than people hope, which is why many become distracted by the idea of success rather than the process that creates it. There is a common pattern that appears whenever someone becomes overly attached to announcing their ambitions. The vision starts receiving attention before it has received enough effort. People hear about the goal and respond positively. They express admiration. They acknowledge the courage involved. For a moment, it feels rewarding. Yet that reward can create an illusion of progress. The mind experiences satisfaction without having earned it. The emotional benefit arrives before the practical result. This creates a dangerous imbalance, because motivation becomes linked to recognition instead of action. When recognition fades, motivation often fades with it. There is also a deeper reason why protecting long-term goals matters. The moment a vision becomes public, it becomes exposed to countless opinions. Some opinions are useful, many are not. People evaluate your goals through the lens of their own experiences, fears, and limitations. Someone who abandoned their ambitions may see yours as unrealistic. Someone who fears uncertainty may encourage caution. Someone who has never attempted something difficult may underestimate what is possible. None of these perspectives necessarily reflect reality, yet they can still influence thinking if repeated often enough. Gradually, the original vision becomes harder to hear beneath the noise. This is why clarity requires protection, not because the world is filled with enemies, but because distraction is everywhere. Attention is constantly being pulled in different directions. The ability to remain focused on a meaningful objective becomes increasingly valuable. Every unnecessary argument, every explanation, every attempt to gain approval creates another opportunity for focus to weaken. A person can spend so much time talking about a future they want that they forget to build it. The vision becomes a conversation instead of a commitment. As this understanding deepens, something changes. The need to be understood begins losing its urgency. The need to prove yourself begins fading. Instead of seeking validation through promises, confidence starts growing through evidence. Each completed task strengthens belief. Each repeated action reinforces identity. Progress becomes tangible because it exists in reality rather than in imagination. There is a quiet satisfaction in this process. It does not depend on attention. It does not require recognition. It comes from knowing that effort is being directed towards something meaningful. Eventually, long-term goals stop feeling like distant dreams and start becoming lived experiences. Not because they were announced loudly, but because they were developed patiently. Not because they received constant praise, but because they survived periods of uncertainty. This is the power of disciplined focus. It transforms possibilities into realities through consistent action. Aristotle understood this principle when he observed, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Meaningful change is rarely the result of a single breakthrough. More often, it is the product of quiet repetition, practiced long enough for possibility to become reality. Yet even after a person learns to protect their future and commit to the process, one final obstacle often remains. It is not a lack of vision, it is not a lack of effort. It is the tendency to keep looking backward, carrying old mistakes and regrets long after their lessons have already been learned. Most people carry a memory they wish they could erase. It may be a decision made in a moment of fear, a relationship that ended badly, an opportunity ignored, or a version of themselves they no longer recognize. Time passes, circumstances change, and life continues moving forward, yet that memory remains. It appears unexpectedly during quiet moments. It returns during periods of uncertainty. It resurfaces whenever something in the present reminds the mind of what once happened. The strange thing about regret is that it often survives long after the event itself has lost any real power. The moment is gone. The people involved may have changed. The circumstances no longer exist. Yet the emotional weight remains because the mind continues carrying it into the present. What hurts is not always the event itself. Often, it is the ongoing relationship a person maintains with the memory. This is one reason regret becomes so difficult to release. The mind keeps searching for closure in a place where closure cannot be found. It revisits conversations that cannot be changed. It analyzes decisions that cannot be reversed. It searches for certainty about outcomes that will never be known. There is always another scenario to imagine, another possibility to consider, another version of events that seems preferable. The process feels productive because it resembles reflection, but in many cases it becomes repetition rather than learning. The same memory is revisited over and over without creating any new understanding. The mind circles the same territory, hoping that one more pass will somehow alter the destination. The Stoics recognized this tendency and approached it differently. They understood that the past belongs to a category of things beyond our control. Once an action has been taken, it becomes part of history. It can be examined. It can be understood. It can even become valuable. But it cannot be changed. This truth may sound obvious, yet many people spend years resisting it emotionally. They accept it intellectually while continuing to argue with reality internally. Part of them keeps insisting that the past should have been different. As long as that argument continues, peace remains difficult to find because the mind is fighting a battle it cannot possibly win. There is an important distinction between learning from a mistake and living inside a mistake. Learning creates wisdom. Living inside it creates stagnation. A person who learns from regret extracts the lesson and carries it forward. A person who lives inside regret keeps carrying the pain while forgetting to carry the lesson. The mistake becomes part of their identity rather than part of their education. Instead of saying, "I made a poor decision," they begin believing, "I am the kind of person who ruins things." This shift is subtle but powerful because identity influences behavior. When people define themselves through their worst moments, they unconsciously limit what they believe is possible for their future. This is why the stories people tell themselves matter so much. Every regret eventually becomes part of a narrative. The question is whether that narrative supports growth or prevents it. One person sees a failure and concludes that they are incapable. Another sees the same type of failure and concludes that they have learned something valuable. The event may be similar, but the interpretation creates dramatically different outcomes. The Stoics believed that events themselves do not determine our experience as much as the judgments we attach to them. This principle becomes especially important when dealing with regret, because regret often survives not because of what happened, but because of the meaning assigned to what happened. As understanding deepens, the purpose of regret becomes clearer. Regret exists to teach, not to imprison. It draws attention to a decision, a pattern, or a blind spot that requires examination. Once that lesson has been learned, its primary function is complete. Continuing to carry the emotional burden long after the lesson has been absorbed serves little purpose. Yet many people struggle with this because they believe letting go means minimizing the significance of what occurred. In reality, the opposite is true. Letting go often demonstrates that the lesson was fully understood. The experience has been integrated. The wisdom remains, even though the suffering no longer needs to. There is also a quiet form of self-respect involved in releasing old mistakes. It requires acknowledging that growth has occurred. It requires accepting that the person who made that decision may no longer exist in the same form. Experience changes people. Knowledge changes people. Time changes people. Holding yourself permanently accountable to a past version of yourself ignores the reality of development. The goal is not to excuse poor choices. The goal is to recognize that a human being is not frozen in a single moment. People evolve, they learn, they adapt, they become different through the very experiences they once regretted. Eventually, a realization begins to emerge. Every moment spent attempting to rewrite yesterday is a moment unavailable for building tomorrow. Attention is limited. Energy is limited. Life itself is limited. When too much of it is invested in reliving old mistakes, there is less available for creating something meaningful in the present. The future deserves more attention than the memory of a completed chapter, not because the past should be forgotten, but because its role has already been fulfilled. The lesson has been delivered. The experience has spoken. What remains is the responsibility to move forward, carrying wisdom instead of weight, clarity instead of guilt, and purpose instead of punishment. The past may have shaped part of the journey, but it does not deserve the authority to decide where the journey goes next. The strongest people are not the ones who tell the world everything. They are the ones who know what to protect, what to let go of, and what to build quietly. Your plans, your struggles, your past, your future. None of them need the approval of strangers to become meaningful. They need patience. They need discipline. They need your consistent attention. If there is one thing to remember, let it be this. Your life changes the moment you stop seeking validation and start seeking mastery. Protect your peace, guard your focus, and keep becoming the person your past could never imagine.